1 second. Yeah. So yeah, my name is Eloise Ardley. I work for the project, and I tend to do this kind of coaching workshop for in different sort of different contexts. But what I really like about this session, particularly, is it really empowers you as product managers, as project managers, to really hopefully take the content of what we're going to discuss and then do it with your teams. Going, afterwards, and to do it again and to keep using it as a very practical tool. And I just want to kind of challenge your thinking a little bit. So we're going to have lots of interactive discussions. I'm going to present a bit, and then we're going to go into breakout. We'll come back, we'll share. So it's kind of a very interactive session. So hopefully you've got some coffee or some something to keep you going for the next couple of hours. But at any point, if you feel like it's going too fast, you're not understanding what I'm saying, you have questions, you're not sure, just please put in the chat, or unmute yourself and interrupt. This is a small group, it's a safe place. We can just, we're amongst friends. So with this kind of stuff, there's never really a right or wrong answer. There's a lot of, it depends. So it's sometimes very useful to just go through and mull over things and discuss that as a group. So that's why we're doing it in that format. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see this? Perfect. Here we go. So outcome for today's session, really, I really want you to be able to understand the difference between a product roadmap and a project plan. Sorry, I just submit somebody in, I think. I know it's Paula, isn't it? Yes, so really to understand the difference between a project plan and a product roadmap. I'll come back to that in a minute. Help you understand the product roadmap framework. So it's a very simple tool that I'm going to use. It's something that I haven't invented. It's in kind of industry standard. There's lots of templates out there, but I just want to help you understand how to use it and make it your own. And that really helps you break down that product or the experience that you're working on into very specific features. And it's all about how do we add value to a user ultimately. And this tool really helps with priorities. So I want to help you being clear on your own priorities as you do the work today. It helps you challenge, and you might not have all the answers and it won't be finished by the end of the session, but it will help you think about how do we prioritize what we're doing, because everybody is busy. There's always a lot on for everybody, no matter what the team, the size, the technology that we use. It's always people, every time I run this session, it's like there's so much we need to do, and it's true. And this tool really helps prioritization. And really, it's giving you a visual tool to justify and validate your resource plan and what you need to deliver. So it's also a good tool for stakeholder management, for engagement with senior leaders in terms of justifying why you're asking for some money or why you're asking for a resource to help with a particular piece. So having that as an artifact that you can create as a team but also use to communicate is really important. Okay, all good? Sounds like a plan. So just a bit of definition, because I'm aware that we might be using quite a lot of jargon, which I think is always helpful to unpick a little bit. So when we talk about product, what do we mean? So a product is something that solves a problem for someone. It offers unique benefit. It needs to be delivered via a viable business model for the organization. And by that, I mean, it doesn't have to be commercial, but it needs to be sustainable. You can't just create things that, you're sinking money into it and there is nothing coming out on the other end. the value and the benefit might not always be financial, but it might be, supporting your audience, so your users. It might be growing the number of users that you have. So it needs to be sustainable. And the product can be the full experience. It can be part of the experience. It can be a whole portfolio of products. It depends on obviously of your context, of the size of what you're looking at. So it could be a website, it could be your entire, if you're a museum, it could be the entire booking experience, it could be the entire visiting experience. It could be, if you're working for Amazon or Google, search is a product. So depending on the scale of what we are, of your organization, you're going to have different definition, different scale. But ultimately, that's what it is. So I've put it in the middle here. You've got the product on the left-hand side. The product addresses a problem and provide benefits to a group of people, users and customers. And on the other side, it generates revenue, it helps sell another product or service, and it serves one of your organization goal. So that's what I mean by product. And typically we could say product and services. We can use them interchangeably. That's a very hard word to say in English. But just in terms of that, it is different from a project. It is not a project, and I think that's the start of how we're going to differentiate the terminology, because a project is temporary. It has a defined beginning and an end in time. It has a very defined scope and defined set of resources. It's unique, so it's not a routine operation. And it has a specific set of operations that you create around it to accomplish that goal. So where the product is never finished, because you are constantly iterating on it. You're constantly going to add, if you have a website, your website is never finished. You're going to keep adding to it. You're going to keep thinking about the experience of the website and what what the user journeys are, where you need to add new features, new content. So it's a slightly different perspective of how you perceive time and what finished means. And the product roadmap really provides you a plan for achieving your product goals, because those goals are linked to the business goal, the organization goal. But a project roadmap lays out that plan in a very time focus. So the main difference for me is in a project space, you're really focusing on time bound. In a product roadmap or product plan, you're looking at goals and objectives. Does that make sense? So the lens into which we might still use a kind of a timeline to map out how you deliver that product. But the main focus is not what can I do in a month, it's what do I need to achieve? Why am I doing this? So that's a subtle nuance, but it's an important one. Does that make sense? Yeah, I can see nodding. Perfect, thank you. And then a little kind of another reminder in terms of product, because I think that's a really important, when you are a product person in an organization, sometimes, particularly if the maturity level isn't very high, it's it could be quite challenging. Try to remember that you users and the organization generally does not know what product they want. They only know what result they need or want. So it's our job as product people to build a product that provides them with the result they want, as opposed to the product that they want. And again, subtle nuance, but it's all about the perspective and how you defined and design that product. So we as product people are all about outcome, all about the why. And so if you understand the why, if you understand the customer problem, the user problem, or the user need, you then create a product that meets those needs. as opposed to, oh, I need to create a website. So if you start with, I've got a project and it's a website and I've got X amount of money and I've got 3 months, very likely you are attacking it the wrong way. You are going to end up with a bigger scope that you can cope with. It's going to be late and you are going to be very unclear on the requirement. If you start with saying, I've got this group of users and their main problem is access to information in a quick way and be able to purchase a ticket. 2 things, access to content, purchasing a ticket. You know exactly what the customer user need is. Yes, typically the solution for that would be a website. Then that becomes your product. Does that all make sense? Yeah. Again, if I'm going too fast, if it doesn't make sense, please unmute yourself and feel free to interrupt. But if there is silence, I'll assume you're clear and therefore we can carry on. Okay, so we're going to play a little game because I want to hear from you as a way to also introduce yourself and just sort of see where you're at in your understanding of this. So I want you all to think about a well-known digital product. So as I said, it could be a website, it could be an app, it could be part of a website that you use or like on a regular basis. So not your work kind of product, but anything that you use as a consumer, as a human being. In the chat, I want you to type in the result for their users, the why, the actual outcome that this product delivers. And then everybody else will have to guess what product we're talking about. Does that make sense? Yes, no? So perfect. Thank you, Vicky. Can we just make a little bit more like flavor? Because that's a big keep things alive. Oh, that's interesting. That's definitely, yeah. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Sam. I'll give you a couple more minutes. Answers question. And so you can see, the way you're thinking about the outcomes is exactly the right way. And it's a very simple, very one-liner, 2 words even, very succinct, right? And most likely is because the people who have designed those products that you're thinking of and using have been very clear on what the outcome, the core essence of the why that product exists. I could give you lots of really bad example where there's a lot of it's very confusing. There's something is trying to do too many things, and therefore it wouldn't be as clear as what you put in the chat. Okay, so let's just everybody unmute themselves. I'm going to pick them and then we can try to guess. So Sam has put watch TV programs whenever you want. So what product is that?
Sky Go.
TV pause.
Yeah.
What they call it? Smart TV, sorry.
Smart TV, yeah. iPlayer from Emma. Could be, yeah, there's quite a few, right? There's quite a few options nowadays for this product. And so we'll come back to that in a minute because obviously similar products can do the same thing.
Oh, is it? Are we having to get involved? I'm not sure.
It was iPlayer.
Yeah, was it? Okay, thanks, Sam. How about Jess? You said keeps things alive?
Yes. It's an app called Planter.
Okay.
It helps you know which of your house plants need more care at different times. I've got 18 of them, so it's really helpful so that I don't overwater things.
I love that.
That's a great idea.
It's great.
Do it for the garden.
So do you have an actual kind of some kind of chip in your plants?
No. You just tell them what type of plant it is, and like,
Okay.
and where you live in the world, and it will kind of know the weather, and then it says how
Amazing.
often different plants need watering. So like, rather than it being like, so there's 18 of them in the house, and rather than it being like one thing that we do, it takes ages. It's like, oh, today those two, and then a few days later another one. So it makes it just like a bit
Amazing.
easier.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. That's a great tip. I think everybody's going to be downloading that soon. We've got Diane, who said chat to friends safely and privately. I think we can all guess this one. Is it WhatsApp?
Yes, WhatsApp.
Yeah. But it could also be text message. It could also be Facebook messengers. It could also be any kind of in-messaging app.
No, I said safely and privately, therefore it can't be Facebook.
True, very true. Who else do we have? Connect people.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking through my phone actually, but that's not necessarily digital. So any of the things on your phone. So yeah, could be Facebook, could be email.
Any kind of social network or
Yeah.
And so you can see that at the core, the very simple outcome of connect people or message or chat, those are kind of very high level, right? When you are in a product design mode, obviously that's your main outcome, and then it's the how you're going to deliver this experience that matters and that differentiates you. So the difference between Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp is that privately, even though they're part of the same group now, but it's privately as a differentiator. The UX is different, the branding is different, the colors is different, but ultimately is the way the experience is being delivered that matters. The difference between Netflix and Amazon Prime and iPlayer is pretty similar in terms of you've got a library of content, you just click, you just a subscription model. It's free for iPlayer, but it's kind of a similar experience, and yet there are some brand and some experience differentiators and price differentiators that make it more or less attractive to different group of users. Does that all make sense so far in terms of where we're going?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. So we're going to go to now sort of the meat of the session, which is all about this product roadmap. So we hopefully you're clear on the product definition and what we call a product in this context. But what is the roadmap? Because I think again those words are being used quite loosely in the industry. Project plan, product roadmap, feature plan. So just to be clear, for this particular exercise, this is what I mean. The product roadmap for me is a very high level, actionable plan that has your major releases, your major buckets of work. It's not detailed. It absolutely must be goal driven, not feature driven. And that's the really key thing, is you start with what problem you are solving. It is a strategic tool, so it's something that you don't use on a daily basis, but you kind of refine it on a maybe quarterly basis, every half year as a team. And it is not your backlog, so it's not a to-do list. It's not your if you have a kind of a backlog management tool like Jira, for example, in some teams are, or if you work with an agency who has a backlog, you might have heard the word ticket as part of a sprint. These are technical terms. The backlog is a technical term, and it's a tactical tool. It's an operational tool. This is strategic. And really, so I've just put a template here. Typically it has dates for the time frame for the release. So it could be Q1. It doesn't have to be that a particular date. A name. And I tend to like, forcing people to choose names that mean something to them. So the release are, as a team, they're kind of a celebration. So I used to work with teams where, it was their favorite cities. So they would go, you'd have the Paris release, the Tokyo release, and the Berlin release. And so everybody would sort of get a bit of a celebration and then a theme, and they would, get a fancy dress that day or food that day of the release that matched the name. So it's a nice little thing it's a gimmick, but it's a nice thing to do as a team to build around that release. As I said, goal and features would come back, and metrics, and metrics is really important. So we're going to go into more of that detail in a minute. And those templates are freely available. If you Google product roadmap templates, there's loads of them out there. I'm basically just giving you in the deck, you'll have the simplest version of it as a table, but you can make it your own. You can use, when you get a bit more mature at this, you can use some actual tools to track this. If you use Microsoft Teams, you can even do like a to-do list tracker format. Works really well with the release, with cards. So there's lots of ways of capturing this document or this asset, but for me, simpler is better. So, as I said to you at the start, I think the benefit of this for me is that it provides that continuity and that clear translation of the purpose of your organization. So you're really clear about what you're doing and why. Again, it facilitates customer stakeholder communication and that true collaboration. So it's not something that somebody does, on their desk, on their laptop, in isolation. It's something that you do collectively as a group with different people. So depends on the size of the team, obviously. If you are lucky to have some people in communication or marketing or digital, if you have people who are more kind of on the fundraising side, if you have people who are more talking to user support, maybe on holding the phone, or it needs to be kind of a true collaborative discussion, because it helps with prioritization. And the biggest thing in any organization, business or charities or even school, is about how do we prioritize, because everybody is busy, and having a common view of what is important and why it matters is the best way to avoid overwhelm, to avoid confusion, and to avoid tension. If everybody's aligned to deliver the same thing for the same reason and very clear on the why, it massively facilitates that smooth way of working. As I said, it helps secure funding. I worked with, we did some coaching with another charity last year where the digital product manager who I coached did an incredibly detailed roadmap. She did an incredible job. Because she needs to go to the board and get some more funding. And if you are in an organization where you have multiple products, so you have a website, you have an app, you have a phone service, you have an in-museum experience, you're working with a partner or an agency to build something, it really helps with that portfolio management. So you can have one roadmap for each, but also you then have one roadmap across your portfolio. So again, this might not apply to you depending on the size and scale of your current organization. But bearing in mind, if you're talking to agencies, partners, having that tool is really important. Okay. So I'll give you one example. This is a commercial example. So it's something that I've worked on with a client a few years ago. It was a tourist kind of a home rental business, and they basically just here on the left you've got I'm going to try to see if I can do this. Sorry. Sorry, it doesn't let me do that. You've got the goals. So here are the two ease the day-to-day management, to attract new homeowners, to create communication hub, to provide transparency. That's your goals. here you've got the metrics. How we're going to measure that the goal is being met. So conversion, NPS, churn, customer loyalty. So these are obviously kind of more commercial metrics, but it's just to show how they align. And then here are the features on the right that delivers that particular objectives. So here in themselves, they're quite big things. You know, having a calendar functionality, for example, is quite a big thing. Booking display is quite a big thing. Or, you know, if you go like a sign-up form, digital house manual, these are features, these are things that need to be built and designed either on the website or either in the overall experience. Like, you know, a welcome tour was something that was in person, delivered in person, for example, but it still helps deliver that particular goal. And then the color coding was just in terms of complexity and how much dependencies, how much work or people, money was involved in that particular feature. So hopefully it gives you a view of what you can aim to create on the back of today's session. And as I said, you can make it your own, you know, you could really play around with what makes sense and how you want to present it, but that's kind of a very simple high level view of that particular product. Okay, so this is where we're going to go into breakout. So we're going to skip over the first two rows. What I like you to think about is the goals. So in your groups, we're going to do small groups. I would like you to think about the goal, the objective of your own product. So spend a little bit of time just talking through, you know, is it a website? Is it a booking system? Is it a fundraising page? Is it a, you know, we can explore that a bit more. What are you trying to achieve? Which customer problem are you trying to solve? So because we are a small group, so that's quite nice. We've got a bit of time. So really think about what customer or user problem you're trying to solve. You don't have to use any sort of digital templates to do that. You can just write them on a notepad or however is easier. And then we'll share across the group when we come back from the breakout. So, you know, we're going to be 2 or 3 per groups. You've got some time to really each introduce, you know, your problems. And for the people in the group who are listening, just try to challenge, say, but why? Why do you need this? Or why are you trying to achieve this? And I'll come in and also just listen and challenge a little bit. Does that make sense? No, yes. No? Yes? Okay. I'm going to stop sharing. I am going to send you into breakouts. So this is 3. And let's sign manually. So Diane, Emma, and Jess, you're in room 1. Paul, Sam. Well, actually, we're going to have. Sorry, I'm just going to change my mind. You should be getting a note to be going into your room now. And why can't I? So I managed to join two groups. The only group I haven't been able to go to is Sam and Vicky, but I'll go that for the next breakout. How is that thinking going in your heads? Like, are you getting a little bit clearer of what we need to do, what you need to do, what the questions you need to ask? Is it confusing? Is it helpful?
I find that really useful. I'm just trying to think about how it works in our organization in terms of who looks after it and at what point you get to feed into it. I used to work for a students' union, and once a year, somebody from each department would be in a big room for half a day, and we would bash it all out together, which is really great. At the moment, we don't really have much in terms of an overall organizational strategy and priorities. So it comes to the point where, like, a department will come to us in the comms team and be like, want to do this. It's like, great, what's the priority? Where does it sit? How much time do we dedicate to this? So I think having someone kind of champion this kind of idea and take it further to the top, because I signed up for so many webinars where it's talking about getting your stakeholders to buy into strategies and all these sorts of things. So I think that bit is an absolutely key thing for us. But in practice, I think it would be an amazing document.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. The best way of doing this is to really get everybody in the room and just, on post-its on the board, just everybody sort of contribute. And typically you need a facilitation. So one of the things that we do at the project is to do that, is to facilitate those discussions. Because it's nice to have somebody just to challenge you and say, yeah, but what about this? And I don't understand that. Because sometimes you can be so convinced that you're doing the right thing, and you probably are, but it's quite also good to have somebody just keep you in check a little bit. Vicky and Sam, I'm sorry I haven't been able to get into your breakout just yet, but I'll come in the next round. How do you want to share a little bit how you found the exercise? Are you struggling? Is it just plain sailing? What did you find out?
I think it's clarified quite a few things for me, just talking, because basically, when you're my issue is engaging with our community. We have a lot of trouble because we're offering free stuff and people don't get that. I've just spoken to Sam, who is needing to do something for the good, but she's actually doing all the literally like the roadmap you need to do first. She's getting things in place, she's got the funding to do the pilot studies, and we're just going, come on, we'll do it for free. And it's like, no, but until you actually physically go. So I've been trying digitally for a year to get people to come on board, and it's not happening. Either we've gone into their spam filter, or people don't trust us, or they've never heard of us. But I went to a quiz night in the community, which is a 3 miles down the road to our local community, and then suddenly, as I was saying to Sam, it's like a tight network of preaching to the converted with community groups, so they know everybody and they will just go yeah within that group, but you can't get in unless you physically put yourself there. So I'm going off again, but I mean, basically, from speaking to her and being in that one-to-one, and then you just sort of, it all unfurls, as though you just have to put yourself there to get that connection. So I've just known what I've got to do, but not necessarily, we haven't actually got to the point of how to put that all into the grid.
That's all right. It doesn't matter. The grid is just here to support the thinking, really, and it's at some point it's nice that you have it in one place. but it's an evolving document and it's an evolving thinking. So I guess, you know, in your case, if the goal is to increase the community engagement or community participation, for example, you know, that's one of the goal.
Yeah, definitely.
You might want to ask, or I might want to ask you why. Why would you need to do that?
Because we're a community interest company, and that's in our articles of association. That's what we want to do. We want to put money in. We want to, I mean, we need to work to get the money in, and then the money then goes, we're not for profit, so it then goes back into the community. But if we're not doing that, it's not our aim. So we're not actually achieving our goal. So, and also we wouldn't be identified as actually doing what we're supposed to be doing. And if we wanted to get funding or be taken seriously, we have to do that. So we do have to. We've only been going a year. But,
no, exactly. So I think so. You've got that line as to increase community engagement, and underneath that, which is what we're going to go now into the feature discussion, is how do you do that? And again, I'm going to make this up, but I think what's, you know, what you could start sort of thinking of is, let's take community. So you could have, well, do we have a Facebook page? Do we, or do we want one even? Is that, you know, the right thing to do for us? Do we have community events, and what kind of events? Do we have some kind of communication tool that, you know, that community can access? How do we engage that? Is it through the website? Is it through a WhatsApp group? Is it through, you know, posters in the street? Is it through tea in the church? And those kind of becomes your feature of your product, but you kind of line them up side by side, because you won't be able to do all of them. And I think that goes back to this, to the point again, you need to then look at them in isolation. So the events, the Facebook group, the WhatsApp group, the, you know, tea at the church, how much resource then is needed for each? How much, you know, value do they add? What's working better than others? Because you can't be everything to everyone. And yes, you're going to need a selection of those features to drive your community engagement. Not just one feature will drive that community engagement goal. But if you're able to sort of almost say, well, this particular one adds X amount of value for our users, and this is the feedback that we get, and this is the level of investment, time, effort, people required to do that, you can then balance them against each other and make much more informed decision in terms of, you know, what do you need to do first.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I want us to go into the thinking next, is that feature level. So in the chat, I've put the template to the grid, that's helpful. So you can download that as an Excel document. But really, all I want you to think about now is those features. What, you know, for if it's a website, you know, Paul, we're talking about the e-commerce, talking about the content, just jot down a few of those that deliver that goal. You know, I think Emma, we talked about your choir recruitment, you're going to have school visits, you know, just line them up almost so it's kind of clear in your head how the puzzle comes together. Does that make sense? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give you another 10 minutes, and I'm going to maybe spend some time with Sam and Vicky first, but the other two groups, if you go back in your groups, and then we can do the same thing. Oh, Sam, you can't see the link. Oh, hang on. No, he hasn't. That's really silly. Let me just try it again. Were we all here? Sorry, everybody. There you go. That should be there now. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to open the rooms again, and then we're going to focus on feature this time around. We'll see you back in 10.
Eloise, I have
yep.
to go to another meeting. You could maybe move Emma to another room.
Oh yes, okay. All right.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay, don't worry.
It's exactly what we were talking about. This is too much demand and
Yeah,
there's not enough resource. And so sorry.
that's all right. Thanks,
We'll
Diane.
watch the recording later. Thank
Okay, thanks, Diane. See you later. Bye.
you. Bye.
Welcome back. Hopefully the other room, because we've only got 2 rooms now. Just check everybody's back. Was it is it something completely new for you on the call? Have you done this kind of thinking or structuring of the thinking before, or something like this before?
Yeah, I've done it when I was at work.
Yeah.
Because I was a product manager, so.
Yeah.
But it's interesting trying to then apply it in a totally different, volunteer setting.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're running this kind of session, is because you can apply it to anything. You can apply it to your personal life and how you run your different sort of initiatives with family, with friends. I think the thinking behind it, I think, is always about how you challenge the why.
My project plan never aligns with my wife's.
That I'm not going to solve that today, Paul. I'm sorry. This is not on my brief. I've got my own set of problems at home to solve. I'm not sure I've cracked this one either, to be honest. All right, welcome back, everybody. So we're going to effectively just wrap up the last 2 kind of rows of the grid together, just because they kind of less specific to, well, they're even more specific, I suppose, to your product. So there's less discussion about it, I suppose. So the next one really, so once we're clear on the why, and we're clear on the different sort of goals that we're trying to achieve, or problems we're trying to solve, and then we have a set of features for each, or a number of elements of components for each of those goals. What's really important is to make sure that we have an idea of what does good look like, because designing those features, creating those components or putting them in place, it's all well and good, but if you don't really know, what do you aspire to, what does good look like, but also how do you keep track of progress, and how do you know that you've succeeded, how do you know that you've actually met that particular need or solved a particular problem. So this is why metrics are really important, and it is something that's quite hard to do, and it's in more kind of digitally mature organization. I think it's one of the big challenge, because data is not necessarily readily available, and you have to sort of force your way to collect it and to analyze it. But it can be really simple, right? So if you if your main problem is to talk about increasing the number of volunteer, well, the metric is going to be how many volunteers do you get in a week, in a month, in a year, and again, this will be based on what's your baseline, where do you start. So if you on average have 25 volunteer a year, it's very unlikely you're going to jump to 200 the following year, right? Unless you have some kind of magical, amazing kind of activity going on. So it's all about trying to be realistic about what is the next step up, how do you progress that from the baseline. So what does good look like? And one of the things that you could do to do that is to look at similar organization, or partner organization, competitors, and how they do it, and what they're doing well. So if you are thinking about, for example, choir recruitment for the cathedral, Emma, can you compare with another cathedral and another choir, and how do they do their choir recruitment, and how many do they have, and how many likes do they have on their Facebook page? And so it kind of gives you a little bit of a benchmark to help you compare. and put that into the right context, because there's no point, you comparing your choir recruitment with the Royal Albert Hall, for example, because that's not the same scale. Yeah. So it's all about trying to get the benchmark of where you are, define what does good look like based on kind of judgment, but also what you know of the space you're in and the kind of organization that you work with. And it's about how you keep track of that. So it's also, do you have just a small process that says, if we're going to be tracking the number of volunteers per year, well, where do we keep this data? And it can be a simple spreadsheet, right? But it could, just having that discipline to keep track of it, so you're meeting that goal. Does that make sense? And obviously there is a huge range, right? So we're talking about volunteer or members' feedback on a survey form, all the way to Google Analytics on the website in terms of traffic, in terms of how many people are clicking the book ticket online. So when you become a lot more mature at this, and you have the tool and the infrastructure underneath to really track this kind of data, it can be quite powerful. Has anybody got anything at the moment? Are you tracking anything? Are you aware of any sort of key performance indicator that you have in your organization? Anyone?
We do visitor surveys.
Yeah.
Again, I think to date this year we've surveyed about 30% of our visitors.
Yeah.
So it's asks about a dozen questions, how they found out about us. Broadly there, the first half of their postcode.
Yeah.
Ethnicity, disability, and really what do they enjoy most about the museum, and things we can improve. Would they recommend a museum?
Yeah, so you've got an NPS score, you've got some recommendation score, you've got some satisfaction. And how do you then feed that back to the museum experience? How do you then look at taking that feedback and
So basically, again, it's something that sits on my desk. So I collate it all, and I just do a monthly report, but we've also got a running one. It's quite interesting, because I was saying to Jess, one of the features that come across all three of our things were interactive. And probably about 1 in 5 of the surveys ask that we have more interactive stuff, both for adults and kids. And that goes back into basically a plan. That's then we look at what we will build into mainly the exhibits or the facility next year, or the year after, that fits in with our forward plan. So it's the first year we've actually done it and recorded it in any great detail. Right,
but that's a good start, and I think that's just with data and feedback and metrics, it's all about starting, having a benchmark, having a starting point, and then you can only sort of evolve from there. I see, Sam, you've put volunteer surveys, social media metrics, website visits, the dwell time page visited. Yeah, it's exactly that. So it's how long people are spending on a page, so that we know roughly if the content is useful or not, how often they're coming back, if you can see a clear connection between number of page visits and then the number of add to basket or book or fundraise or donate, kind of metrics, call to actions, and as I said, try to compare that with a similar size organization, a similar sort of topic, so roughly what you could aspire to, and then you can be clearer on, for example, if people come and do click on they land on the home page because they found you somehow, but then they don't stay or they don't go anywhere else, is because the home page isn't probably clear enough in terms of what they need to do, or it hasn't got enough content, or it's badly laid out. So then when you start thinking about the redesign of the website, for example, you can think of clearer call to actions, or you can think of a different messaging, or more content, or so that's kind of how it helps tracking the progress and have you prioritize what you need to do. Okay, any questions on metrics so far? Any thoughts or any challenges, anything you want to throw out there? No? Okay, so the last two really, I think, on that grid are kind of, we're not going to go into too much detail because they're kind of obvious, but they're kind of the thing that you need to just have in the back of your head in terms of people, resources, and tools and dependencies. So to deliver those goals that you've clearly agreed to, for each of those features that you have mapped to that goal, are you dependent on a particular team, on a particular person? Is that person going to go on maternity leave, or is it going to, are they working on something else for the next 6 months? Do you need a particular tool? Do you need an e-commerce plugin? Do you need a ticketing system? Do you need a content management system? Do you need your Facebook social feed? So just, it's almost like this kind of completes the map of the people, the tool that you need for those particular components. So you're aware that those individual items might have their own roadmap. So, you can't control the Facebook roadmap, but if you're solely relying on Facebook to do community engagement, and then tomorrow Facebook goes down, or Elon Musk buys Twitter, and your entire kind of strategy is Twitter, and now all of a sudden you're going to have to pay for blue tick, well, it completely changes your perspective, right? So having clearly laid out the things you are dependent upon, whether they're people or tool, is really important to just make sure that your priorities are manageable and they are deliverable. So again, this is kind of an exercise that you can do particularly with your IT teams, or if you're working with a partner, as an agency to develop the website, they can help with, is there any key dependencies here that you need to be aware of? And it's also a good place to put things like ethics and compliance. For example, if you work in an organization that deals with young people, you're going to have some data privacy things to bear in mind, so you can't necessarily get email from people. So just think more broadly of the things that could get in your way in delivering that particular goal. And then it's about, how do you manage that? So then it's about, if it's identified as a dependency, as a key risk, how do you do the work in the background to talk to the right people, to influence their roadmap, to secure that resource, to move that roadmap or that hurdle out of your way. But at least, again, it's all on the same page, so you're clearer on the dependencies. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm just going to share my screen again for one more. Oh, where'd it go? Sorry, 1 second. I have lost my deck. That's not good. Sorry, everybody. Here we are. So we're going to try to finish. We nearly finished because it was a smaller group, so we've done really well. One thing I wanted to talk about. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry, it's not letting me show. Could you see my screen a minute ago?
Yes.
Oh. Got two different. How about now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to do is, particularly with technology project, I think the big challenge is to know how long is a piece of string, is to how long is how much effort is it going to take to do something. So when you clear on your verticals, then the big job is, okay, so in what order do I do things, and how long is it going to take me to do one thing, and how much money do I need for this? So particularly when this is very specific around building digital product, so it might not apply to all of the things that we talked about today, but particularly with website design or app or games, this is quite relevant. Estimation is something that you need to be a little bit aware of, but I suppose I imagine most of you would be working with a partner to build, and so that's something that they should help with you. They should help you with, but their estimation is only going to be as accurate and as good as your roadmap is clear. And this is why, before going to an agency to commission a new website and to spend a lot of money on this, having done the roadmap work and being clear on the priorities and being clear on the problem you're solving is really, really important. And to your point, Joan, really clear user research, understanding what people really want and validating that before you build anything. But just wanted to touch, because we've been asked before, so how do I know how much money I need to ask for this website? So we tend to use this kind of t-shirt sizing kind of terminology, which is small, medium, large, and this is the kind of the work it takes to do that. But a lot of the time, I must admit, it's a guesswork. You sort of use your common sense and putting a whole new ticketing system might be quite big, but actually, if it's just an Eventbrite type thing, it's setting up an Eventbrite page is really easy, and that might just be an hour or two of somebody's time. So it's only at a moment where you know roughly what your solution could look like, i.e. building a new ticketing system or integrating an Eventbrite page, you're going to have two very, very different sides of the effort. So it's probably better to think about it in terms of complexity and effort rather than actual time spent. Time as a metric is very is not very indicative, I would say, of the value or the effort that it takes, because something could take a year, but actually it's not that complex. It's because somebody hasn't had the time to prioritize it. So I don't want to use time as a lens. I'd rather you think about the complexity. How many people need to be involved? How many systems it touches? How long is the customer or the user journey? That is going to give you a better sense of the complexity than time. And as I said, typically it's something you do with your agency, web development partner, somebody who's got technical expertise. And then you can also use some kind of benchmark. So if you've done this before and it wasn't too laborious, then use that as a benchmark for what does good look like. How does that resonate with you? I'm not sure you have to do this in your role, so I'm just leaving it there as a, because I know we've had this discussion before with other organizations who say, yeah, but we're really struggling with the estimation piece in terms of knowing how much we need or how much time things take. So that's why I kind of touch upon it really quickly at the end. But okay. Right. That's kind of the really it from the roadmap, really. As I said, the next step for I'm hoping is that you can then take it away. You've got a better understanding of the framework and how to structure the questions, and you can go away with your teams and you've done some mapping, some draft work, but hopefully you can take that away and do it in a more kind of complete way, I suppose, with your team to have that asset, that artifact shared and understood by everyone, and potentially challenging. Some people might say, actually, no, we want to do this first, and this is more important than this, because but at least it gives you the evidence and the structure and the thinking behind it. Any questions, any thoughts, any reflection on today? We've covered quite a lot of things. I talked a lot. Is there anything that you want to share that was helpful or still unclear?
No, it was helpful for me. Thank you.
You're welcome, Vicky. Anyone else? No, you're all very shy. But yeah, I hope that was helpful. And if as I said, if you need any more kind of thinking, you can sort of look at the templates on the internet. Really, there are lots of them out there, and you tend to get sort of friendly reminder of how you feel in each of those blocks. So, but for now, thank you so much. Paula, I'm not sure you're still here.
Hi, sure am.
Okay.
Hello.
Is there anything that I need to do in terms of I don't know, attendance survey?
No, I just need to double check that Joan, which organisation you're from?
UK Police Memorial.
Thank you. Super. No, that's great. Thank you, everybody.
Brilliant. Have a lovely rest of your day, and hope the roadmaps are shaping nicely in the next few weeks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.